big feature of our lives is intention. The English word intention, the Pali word cetana. Is intention or cetana is a movement of citta. Obviously, by the sound of the word you can tell that. It's really the kind of do it energy. So it's not necessarily calculated. It can be quite a kind of a jump. Oh yeah, often it is a jump, it's a reflex, a reaction. Reactions are simple, we don't have to be wise about them, they just happen. That's their problem. And clearly we're doing things with the quality of cetana. It's involved with how we speak, how we act, even what we bring to mind and linger upon. This is Cetana bhikkhave kammam vadanti. Cetana bhikkhu is karma. This is karma. And word karma might bring a certain shiver because it means there's consequences. There's following the cetana. With the cetana, there's some kind of result. And the result is internal and external. So clearly actions affect others. They also tend to create habits and shapes in our own psychologies and behaviour. Speech affects others. It also really embeds certain modes of thinking, highlights certain ways of thinking, topics and even manners of thinking. So you're spurting thinking that jumps, foggy thinking, thinking which harshness involved. Or of course, gentle, progressive, careful investigation, good karma. Affects others and affects ourselves. Our own mind and heart get shaped by the quality of this cetana that moves through it. And these shapes, formations, sankhara, begin to determine even what we think about, and even modes of thinking. So, for example, by and large in the world, thinking that's flavoured by equanimity is rather rare. It's generally some kind of passion to make something, to get excited, to direct something, it's not open, Dispassion is not a common flavour of cetana in the world in general. But this is, so these are called, cetana is one of the formations, sankhara, in that it forms how we act, how we speak, how we think, and that has effects, that definitely shapes other people's moods. If you're harsh, it shapes other people's, if you're frightened or nervous, so it certainly shapes other people, and it shapes ourselves, makes us brutal or insensitive or purely self-concerned. It's called a formation. Another formation is attention, because that definitely shapes. What we give attention to becomes the mould of our intentions. Becomes what you give attention to, that topic and that way of attending to something definitely becomes the vessel within which one's mind forms. I'm brooding about stamp collecting or bird watching or whatever, then my mind tends to operate in those terms with eagerness, excitement. Of course, we can tend to give attention to grudges and grievances, and lo and behold, energy will flow into those, and that will definitely shape how we react. So this is not even, deliberately conceived of. So someone who is, lost trust because they've been very badly harmed or damaged or treated, then the pattern of that, the mind becomes fearful, cramped, nervous. Therefore, what floods into it tends to produce those kind of, comes out. When you really recognize this kind of mutual internal, external conditioning, then you get a lot more equanimous and perhaps tolerant, realizing, it's a person who's got a lot of that particular shape. She's been told for the last 40 years she's got to get on and do things to make things work, and that's why she's so jumpy. Because they've been programmed, because these sankharas also, one can consider them as programs. And we get programmed. We adopt habits and behaviours from our society, from our elders, from what happens. So then then that shapes the mind, the heart becomes, configured in that way, and then naturally when energy flows into it, then it tends to produce those kind of patterns. Hasty, agitated, or intense. And of course, we think this is the person, because it becomes the person. The nature of karma is that it's not the person creates the karma creates the person. We get shaped by actions. This is the internal effect. The formation is contact, which means something happens and it pushes my button. And there we go. Intention starts happening. Attention starts clasping around that thing that, I found suddenly made me jump. Then intention comes up to protect myself or to grab hold of it. Mind gets compressed into a certain state. And again, this is conditioning. So these then become kind of established. And the person really, as an experience, is the sum total of that programming. Fortunately, that's not what we are. We're not just the person. But the person tends to take the center stage of our experience. So that so important that our intention, our volition, our interest, our inclination is, how can I just step back from the person? Not out of negativity, but just kind of wide and open out from that. Because I'm not just the person. There's also something more boundless and unconfigured. This is a hint of unconditioned, a suggestion of it. The sankhara often also translated as conditions, or conditionality, or conditioning. And so, unconditioning means coming out of the conditioning. We seek and incline towards, and very much put our energies and intentions into processes and paths will take us out of the conditioning, unravel it. Not just as a sort of a break, but actually to not just, oh, with that, and I can step out and into something else and then go back to the conditioning, but actually more thoroughly is when the very nature of the conditioning can be held and gradually, carefully investigated and dismantled. So we don't have to be the same old person again and again and again. Because the person as it uses, you don't hold it as something you cling to, identify with, but naturally we all have names, numbers, personalities, and we have to communicate with those. We have intention, we have attention, we have language, we have certain amounts of knowledge, all these kinds of things. Then, but the ditti is when you really take that to be a lasting entity that you either favour or dislike. Most people have some sense of disliking it. Because one of our basic conditioning processes, you should be better than you are. It's very fundamental programming for human beings. And, maybe that doesn't sound so accurate, so inaccurate, but, rather than you should be better than you are, here's how you can bring forth your potential. Is perhaps a more useful way of encouraging growth rather than surgery or sticking bits on. And this is all part of that process, you see, of how do skillful states get encouraged rather than enforced. So rather than just kind of blindly adopting behaviour to avoid being punished and being accepted, we really get a feeling for, oh, this is beautiful, I feel richer, stronger, brighter, clearer, like this. And that's the optimal way of growth. Rather than I should behave myself and look like this and don't do that and be here on time and be the best and so forth. Which, that's putting it very crudely, the language is often more subtler than that. Sometimes it's not even language, it's who gets chosen, who gets picked, who gets the attention. Oh, hey, I want some. No, you don't count. Oh, what do I have to do to get that attention or affection or inclusion? It's very tough stuff, human society. But even effects like that, when one's not included or not consulted or not given any regard, basic atmosphere comes something not quite right about me. What's wrong with me? And then the program starts. You should be like him, you should be like her. But you can't be like him or her. So then you fake it. Or we're doing things where we think other people approve of us. Or whatever, And it goes on. A lot of human behaviour is like that, social conditioning, isn't it? And you could say there's something skillful about that, but something radically harmful about it. The skillful sense is if you really live with the wise and the loving, and you actually experience the happiness of that and the clarity of that, something new begins to internalize some of those qualities. You get the feeling for it. Oh yeah, this is how, you're not trying to be like them, but the qualities of goodness are not a personal copyright. So you begin to recognize things like modesty and generous sharing and compassion. You notice it. Oh, this is beautiful. And then you grow. So that's more like, the way we grow rather than just accumulate sets of ideas about what we should be. And so this is why the company of the wise, skillful, is always so fruitful and encourages one to open up and listen to it, pick it up. So your intention externally is like that, and that's sensing what's happening, how is it? Sensing internally is, how do I fit, how do I settle, how do I open up, what feels comfortable for me in this. And this way path comes out of a process like that. And you begin to recognize areas of one's part which are just like, I don't need to be doing that. I don't need to be proving, justifying, or hiding, or forcing. It's uncomfortable, stressful, painful. And relinquishing. And so it's the deconditioning of the painful, the confusing, the unnecessary, the unskillful. And start cultivating intentionality like that. And what it seems to me to involve is you're going into a much more just open, kindly space, atmosphere of acceptance, and just take your time and feel into, is this piece of behaviour really needed, helpful? No, it doesn't necessary. Deconditioning. And that we can do that. So there's intentionality. Now it sounds so kind of ponderous and perhaps even strongly directed. It's a softer kind of intentionality. It's a intentionality that's just asking one to feel, not to do, but to feel the quality. Whereas often intentionality in the world in general is to do something, fix the car, mow the lawn, feed the dog, get to work, hurry up, get it done, get the thing done, do the thing. Which could be a helpful thing, but with a kind of more open and softer kind of intentionality. It means, feed the dog kindly, drive the car carefully, get to work safely in a composed way. So you're much more bringing these internal qualities to bear upon your external actions. Even speak in a way that's pleasant to hear, clear, well modulated, kindly. Encourages the other person to inquire back, to make it, what do you mean? So often just begin to use habits like da-da-da-da. Do you understand? Is that clear for you? Please let me know. Just so that you're really cultivating a certain refinement around behavior. That's not just a matter of kind of etiquette, but sensitivity. And this is what, the internal qualities build up through that. So when the action ceases, the internal qualities are sustained. Right? So you do the thing, but you did the thing with carefulness and attentiveness. The thing you did, the fixing the car, the feeding the dog, stops, but the quality of careful attentiveness remains. Because it's established in the heart. The heart's taken on that shape, that pattern, that mode. So everything we do, cleaning the sala, going for the meal, even doing the common everyday things we do every day, doing that sense like it's the fresh moment where you could do it just with just that sense of sensitive beauty, rather than functional, get it over with. And of course, this is the issue for people, isn't it? Because life in the world generally requires a good amount of activity. But it's really of a functional nature. Either, get the thing done, it's a big thing, and which the more the quicker. So in fact the quality of how it's done becomes irrelevant. Even don't have the space to actually experience it, you just got to get on. The main internal qualities encourages pressure and urgency. Right? So there's always an internal quality involved, but some of it is ignorant. We don't really know what it is, but just the fundamental quality is pressure and urgency. Get it done, otherwise there will be failure, blame, so forth. So people are running on that. Naturally, this is why so many people crack up. Because these internal qualities are not just some vague spiritual, thing. They're actually fundamental realities for human beings. We have hearts. It's not just a Buddhist concept. So everything one's doing with a sense of anxiety, fear, pressure, worry about getting fired, get on with it, hurry up. Then that naturally is going to have its effects. And sooner or later, people get stressed, depressed, can't sleep, antidepressants, pills, so forth. This is pretty common. If it's lesser than that, people just get burnt out, feel overloaded and sag. And when that sagging state, we just reach out for some comforts, something to eat, something to watch, something to lie back in. When the heart is just left disordered, kind of just a jumble. We haven't actually cleaned it, we just basically dumped it. And sank back in a chair watching something or munching peanuts. With no clear intention, just so it's not as if that's particularly evil. It's just that, what shape does it leave your heart in? A disordered, jumbled state in which random thoughts and impressions happen, and speech just jumps out reflectively, reactively. It's kind of a bit of a dump, really. So between the choice of being either a dump or a wreck, most people will tend to probably become a dump, because at least you could probably clean it up later. And this really means clear intention, determination. Like, okay, just stop, just breathe in, breathe out. You can't breathe in it's too subtle, walk up and down. You can't, even that's a bit too subtle, chant a mantra over and over again, just something steadying, calming, and soften it, quiet it down, slow it down. Just doing this simple energy process of steadying the energy coming out of the debris, the car crash of life. And if we have that, so one's foundation is then on some sort of skillful states. Probably the first thing is to know one can do them, and they're not outside your reach. So even a few moments, even 5 minutes of just refraining from, unwholesome habits, refraining from pointless behaviour, already that is a skillful adhita resolution. Just take 5 minutes of just refraining from, even though the urge is to get angry or upset or switch something on or push a button or munch, just stop, refrain and just take a breath. You've got a body, come back to that. And relax the muscles. The nature of intention is an action thing, so it tends to run through the nervous system and it activates muscle. This isn't necessarily power muscle, it's structure muscle. You feel tight, tense, knotted up, guts tighten up, face tightens up. And that becomes established. Comes like everything else, if it's repeated, it becomes the model, the mould, whereby you get used to being tight, tense. You don't even know what it feels like to be relaxed. So this structure, I remember one of the nuns, she was a nun, she's saying that one day she found out she wasn't grinding her teeth. Normally when she'd wake up in the morning, her teeth would be grinding. It was just like, and finally it stopped after 7 years of practice. Just this embedded reflex of holding on, So that's how it can go, And this isn't necessarily someone who's doing massive amounts of evil. It's just pressure. Which we perhaps, don't acknowledge it as a harmful thing. Killing harmful, stealing harmful, but pressure, damages. Well, it gets things done. So sometimes it's the case that a person doesn't really realise that things could happen without squeezing, without pushing. So we kind of bring that sometimes maybe into meditation. Alright, meditate, right, get on with it. Get down, concentrate. Make sure you don't ever, drive mindfulness into the object. Unrelenting. Stay with it. And sort of could sound like vigorous and keen, and maybe for some people it is. Maybe they can do that. But people are already living under pressure. When pressure is the mode, pressure is the fundamental, internal, unspoken of quality that accompanies their intentions. And doing something quite damaging. Someone's telling me that he was on a retreat where it was like 4 in the morning and start, and in this kind of sense you've got to stay with this mental object, this particular object through the day. He said the first moment you woke up was a sense of dread. You've got to endure this until 10 o'clock at night when you can finally collapse. to achieve the goal, you know. And he said at a certain point, you had to go to the interview, you get some like a 7-10 minute interview, which is just report on the breath, report on when your mind moved, report on this, more efforts needed, you know, report. So it's just a very simple, tell me how this thing going. He got to the interview room and he just said, no, I can't, no, I can't do it. And I said, it's time to go, and he just left. I just can't put myself through this. Then he had to take up various exercises to get his body back to normal. Some flexibility, his whole system was so seized up. And yet, you know, is there a sense of deep incentive? I'm sure there is. But perhaps it's something that's not like that stressful. It's motivated, it's eager. Yes, let's do something, let's get going. But it's kind of an internal fullness that really seeks to fulfill itself. And, you know, for a lot of people, the tank is empty. So you can't really start pumping from that tank because it's empty. So you put strain and pressure to get somewhere without actually having the requisites to do it. So, you know, what are the requisites if you keep filling up your tank with skillful states? And then, you've got some fuel, you've got some food, and then, let's keep going, it's great, stay with this, streams out. And, every one of us has to really understand this requirement, not for just idealism or willpower or key motivation. You have to have the resources. The resources don't come from the inner person, however she or he is really determined to get it done. They come from the chitta, the heart. And if the heart is not happy, not comfortable, not open, not rich, you just can't do it. So the quality of where do these skillful states arise from? Where do we get the food? We act, we speak, we think in ways that come from a good place, best we can manage right now, and move out into the external. We see the results. Oh yeah, and we're gladdened by it. One of gladdened by it, pamoja is the term, the Buddha saying, if you really cultivate skills and virtues with the, and drink it in, the qualities, the energies of those, you will be gladdened. And when you're gladdened, the anxiety drops away. The compulsiveness drops away. When you're gladdened, and the compulsiveness and the urgency drops away, you feel steadier, more comfortable, stronger, more centered. When you're more centered, you can feel your entire body becomes comfortable, no longer nervous, no longer tight, comfortable. When your body is comfortable, your mind, your heart easily sits within it, easily sits in an undistracted way, easily absorbs, breathing in, breathing out, easily absorbs it. It's happy. This is what we call samadhi. So yeah, with samadhi there's the arising of knowledge, true knowing. So yeah, but then when we think, I've got to get concentrated, put more effort in, it's the wrong language. You don't concentrate, you cultivate, and samadhi is what arises as a fruition when things are comfortable and settled, steadied. Heart doesn't want to go anywhere else. But in line with that is the beginning to melt or dissolve some of these person-forming formations. And quite a bit of that is social formation. We are creatures who live in a human environment. So how we're received or approved of or disregarded or accused, barked at or reasoned with, definitely, have effects. So certainly in our community, the idea is, the theme is can we keep supporting our human environment so that we all drink it in and benefit from it, and everybody counts. This is no longer a matter of the guy at the top, because any human being who refers to any other human being in the community, it's going to be karma. It doesn't deal with hierarchy or seniority. There's always going to be some effect. So anybody can generate generosity, goodwill, patience, courage, so forth. And that's going to have an effect. It's our contribution. And we drink that in. You drink it in individually, you drink it in communally. The result is you find you're sitting in an environment whereby a sense of fear, pressure, anxiety doesn't have to continue. What we may not even recognise in ourselves. Nobody's blaming you. Nobody's if there's somebody blaming you, it's probably you. So a sense of aramana, which is not exactly a distinct sense object, it's a mood tone. The heart dwells in mood tones. Mood tones are internal, mood tones are external. You can live in an atmosphere whereby the general mood tone, you can sense it. It's still. So certainly, when I come to this hall, there's a sense of massive stillness. Even people moving around in it, there's a whole atmosphere of it is still, restrained, careful. And is it in the cement, in the bricks? No, it's somehow it's in the field, which probably each of us pick up. We know where we're going, we know what to bring in, what to bring out, we keep it tidy and clean. And there's an overall aramana, which acts as a source of benefit. Really the coming out of the person means we're attentive to not just the hot spot of me, but also the mood tone of the Dhamma, the mood tone of the training, the mood tone of the community, tuning into it, taking it in. You need to relax one's kind of flippant behaviour or carelessness, subtle qualities, learning to operate, move quietly, carefully, without being tense about it, fluidly. Don't even chant, not bash it out to get it done, but get it over with, the daily ritual, but it's something that's beautiful to hear. Easily sits in the heart. Arises through people listening and tuning in to the same thing, without one voice even dominating it. That's the beauty when it's corporate. So then you've got something that's an external, and it's beginning to an internal. It's beginning to replace the internal world of the person, which is often a series of thoughts, repeated mood tones. Here's me getting anxious again. Here I'm getting angry and upset again, frustrated, blaming others again, and again, And externally, whereby you start getting into grumble groups, which is one of the common source of human behaviour, isn't it? People get together and complain and share their grumble. Clearly there are things one can feel disappointed by, but of what use is it to collude and develop a sour atmosphere? So these then begin to refer to something beyond those immediate knee-jerk reflexes that we can have when things don't go away, or our perceptions tell us, she's like this, she's like this, she's like, what, are you sure? If she's like that to you, you sense her that way, what do you think's happening there? The person is a person because of conditioning. So in our duty towards each other is to be able to reach beyond the persons. How, gently inquire, how are you feeling? How is it for you? Come in the kitchen, I want this, I don't want that, why can't I have this? Or rather than just react to it or follow it, what's happening for you? Oh, I feel really worried. Okay. Let's just, talk real speech. So these are called relations. Wholesome behaviours. How do these lead on? When we recognise wholesome behaviours are wholesome, skillful, how they feel. They feel brighter, clearer, more comfortable. And the more you linger in it and internalise it, dwell in it, you don't even need a result. This is where things really begin to undo. Because the behaviour itself is already beautiful. It doesn't need to claim anything or even achieve anything. It just is. This is what it feels like. And some of the grasping and the claiming and the identification and the when we get resolved fades out. Don't need results. That's the ending of karma. We don't need a result. Just then the mood softens, going to something where there's no karma. Ending. unconditioning. Do you know what I mean? You know, like the average mind, well, what's next? Do this and then what? And then what next? And what next? What next is called becoming, craving to become, craving for a future. What if there's no what next? No need for what next, because I'm not going to grab the result anyway. And the results are grabbed because there's a need to form a person. The person forms out of grabbing, heart-grabbing results. Bad results or good results. First you stop grabbing bad results, which is a sense of getting configured by confusion and pain in the world. Then you know, just getting yourself tightened up and stressed. Really coming out of that time and time again, and beginning to change your behaviour mode so you don't pick up, you don't get those knee-jerk rushes. You know, and it's going to be very modest. I was just noticing how how easy it is for me to be doing one thing, planning, preparing for the next. You know, so putting a sock on, trying to make a cup of tea. No, just put the sock on, and then make a cup of tea. I'm halfway putting the jacket on, and I'm already, you know, preparing for the next thing. Could you just do the one thing? And then, you know, so just those small things like that, doing one thing at a time, without planning for the next. So kind of that continuity of Dharma becoming, beginning to kind of break that, so that there isn't the accumulation, the retaining. Things can pass. And the mood of the heart is very open. No grasping. And no grasping is the sign, if you like, of the deathless, citta, removed from grasping. So intention, work on it. Many people intention is like the arrow, an arrow. You shoot your energy towards something, towards a target. The idea is to shoot as many arrows as possible, hit as many targets, perhaps as ducks in a shooting gallery, you know, pop, pop, pop. And then speed it up so it's even quicker, pop, 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 pop. And then, as you cultivate, so the target's always moving. Anyway, just how do you hold the bow more carefully? More steadily. And then, how do you release the bow? And just contemplate steadiness. And see, there's a process there. And you're inclining your attention and your intention, those formations, you're inclining back to, first of all, you know, not just shooting off arrows in all directions, but really preparing, steadying, so, and then eventually you put down the bow and you contemplate steadiness. Just no direction, This unconditioning, uncoupling, and that's the beauty of it is that steadiness, which can seem so ephemeral, becomes the abiding mode of the citta. So everything then comes from that steadiness. When there's action to be done, it comes from steadiness. When there's no action to be done, steadiness remains. Of course, in meditation practice, this is a time when you're actually able to more fully contemplate the qualities of how you do meditating. Whether you do it soft, sharp, spacious, warm-hearted, qualities of intention that you put in to being present, to sustaining presence, to avoid distractedness, to dismantling your will, negativity, passion, qualities you put into it. And those qualities then accumulate to give you greater strength, clarity, and reveal aspects that you couldn't see before. You didn't realize. Because the nature of intention is when you're shooting off, you're hitting the target, but you're missing the rest. What are you missing out? What are you not listening to when you're shooting off those arrows? What are you not receiving? Intention tends to obscure receptivity, so a wise person moderates it. Then in the receptivities where you drink in the results, the qualities, the internal qualities that accompany it. So let's continue our practice today. Here we go.